These dates are anticipated completion dates here. It would be rebuilding Sampling Middle School, rebuilding Northside Elementary School, rebuilding the majority of Washington Elementary School. That's always been the plan, in spite of what you might have heard. And to keep the annex that was built in 1994 in place. I'll show you that in a moment. Rebuild the career technical shop at Clark Fork Senior High School. And I'm going to show you our division and Pine property here. This is what the layout would look like. We would have our middle school currently sits about right here. The middle school would be off of Pine Street, and that's by design. By thinking about, okay, we got 42 acres, a little bit more maybe, to work with. How will we have the right number of fields, as well as the space for both schools and some additions that we're doing. And our committee felt like, and our admin team felt like, we ought to get some space anyways between the middle school and the high school. For many reasons. One is this is the traffic nightmare over here right now, with all the entrances for the middle school and exits for both the middle school and high school. We'll alleviate some of that. You'll notice on the new middle school that there's a little bump there. That would be an auxiliary gym. Most of you that have lived here for a while that are involved in athletics and activities, we agree that we cannot have enough gym space in our communities here. We're always fighting for gym space, and kids are practicing basketball, elementary students, at 9 o'clock at night, which probably is the best time for kids to do those kinds of things. The high school, you will see, actually has 4 new classrooms. This future auxiliary gym is just a placeholder. We're not doing this in this particular levy, but it's for the future, something that would be considered. Right now we have portables here, we have portables somewhere around here, and we have an art room over here that all belong to our high school. And anytime that I've been involved in building projects over the last 25 years in different school districts, you get rid of the portables when you build schools and you remodel. It's not what you want. They're not the best learning environments. In particular, when they're spread out all over a big campus and kids are having a hard time to get to their classes on time. So from a learning efficiency standpoint, not good. But just as importantly is from a safety and security standpoint, it's not good either. Unfortunately, we sometimes have to lock down our buildings. Every year we do here for various reasons. And it's important for us to be able to do so quickly and make sure students are safe. And if they are out here, and you might have a lockdown for some reason when the kids are in transit, that's a problem, that's an issue. I've worked in schools and that's been an issue before. The goal is to have a single point of entry in all of our schools. So that, and by that, all that means is that every exterior door should be locked. There should only be an unlocked door on the front. That's monitored by school staff. Right now, I'm going to be truthful, that's not the case. We cannot have single points of entry in our schools because we have outbuildings and portables that students need to get in and out. So this is going to be a really good improvement. Now, in the last few years, have we absolutely minimized the number of places where students would come in, or parents into our schools? Yes. We used to be all over the place a few years back. Now it's okay. We need to have the fewest doors unlocked as possible. And if we have to have kids walking in the snow a couple hundred yards, then it's okay. So we are, don't get me wrong, with these facilities, we're still very careful, but there's only so much we can do. This here is at Northside Elementary. This would be built while school is in session. We can do it efficiently without disrupting the student learning. It could be a super cool value add to student learning, speaking from experience as a planning principal in the late 90s, where we were able to watch a school come up from behind the school as a principal, and we integrated all kinds of really cool learning activities in that whole process. But we can do this in a very safe manner for our students. You see that also when you build schools, you have new schools, you make sure you have a separate entrance for parents and staff if you can on the property. Here we can. This is just to show you where the school would be placed. We've been criticized a little bit from some people saying, well, what's the front of the school really going to look like? What are the classrooms really going to look like? And school districts do not go through the design phase until after you pass a measure, because the design is typically 6 to 7% of the overall cost of the project. That's an architect's fee. So what happens is you get the placement, you start working on cost per square foot, all those kinds of things, pass the levy, then you work through what's called an educational specifications process with the architects, and staff is involved, community is involved, and we start designing the actual building. This is Washington Elementary. This one's a little trickier because, you know, we have all this space, but we wanted to, of course, make sure that that annex was incorporated into the new building. That was built in 1994. That's what the footprint of where it would be at. We cannot, unfortunately, do this while the students are in this building. To do so, we would have to bring portables in, which would come at a cost to kind of stage the process. It would take a longer amount of time, and it would cost anywhere between $400,000 and $500,000 to do that. So our committee recommended that, okay, well, we stage the projects in such a way so that when Sandpoint Middle School, the new middle school is built, those students move from the old school to the new one. These students would move over to Sandpoint Middle School for a minimum of 6 months. The goal would be get them in and out 6 months to get into the new school. A maximum of 1 year. We're very confident that that's the length of time. So the sooner, the better we can get them into their new space. Let's see. I think I covered that pretty well. This next slide just shows Clark Fork Junior Senior High. Their shop currently is not attached to the high school. We would attach it again to allow for the ability to have a single point of entry at that school. I should share something pretty interesting about that particular school. It was going through a phase that people were fairly worried about. Oh my gosh, we're having dwindling enrollment out there. Mm-hmm. And so the staff is incredible in all of our schools, but I'll talk about Clark Fork in particular. I'd go out and work with that staff and challenge them to think about a different way to educate the students. Can you do something different to attract more students? And they were asking questions. Can we do this? Can we do that? Can we do this? And to everything, I said, yes, you can do that. Yes. And they're like, really? And I said, yeah, you should ask more often. We can be innovative in our schools to meet the unique needs of the community. So they went for it. And right now, they're, I think, one of only 5 schools in the state of Idaho to have an innovative school designation. And they're one of just a handful of schools that are in the mastery-based education project out there in Idaho. And our enrollment in 1 year increased by 15%. It's pretty cool. So I already went through the portables. We'd be moving some athletic fields, rebuilding the athletic fields, etc. We would also be doing additional safety and efficiency improvements at all of our schools. And I will use Farman Stidwell as a good example. A school that is not in great shape, that is not on this ballot for a remodel, which is someone who will need some kind of remodel. However, that school and all the others will have some kind of improvement because the needs are there. Currently, we do not have an integrated bell clock intercom system, which basically means it's very difficult. If you need to go into lockdown, for instance, at any one of the schools, there's several things that you would have to do. And in all cases, you have to call a lockdown from an office. And being an elementary school principal for 9 years, we had to call lockdowns on occasion. I know how important it is to be able to call a lockdown from any classroom in the building. So an integrated system will allow anyone from any classroom to make a call to go into a lockdown. And you can, there's less steps to get law enforcement here and students safely locked into the buildings. New schools today, when they build them, and I haven't talked to our architects, they were doing this in the late 90s and the early 2000s. Lockdowns are very simple. You push a button inside this office, and all the doors are on magnets, and everything just shuts and locks. You know, teachers don't lock doors. This is a very efficient way to do things. Want to get right into what will this really cost taxpayers. Kendon mentioned it does come at a cost, and I don't love having to go out for supplemental levies and these kinds of things because you are asking people to raise their property taxes. It's not what we wish we had to do, but we do. On this particular, $55 million is a lot of money. In most communities, the tax rates would go through the roof because they don't benefit like we do in our community from a very broad, healthy tax base. Property taxes would increase $200 per $100,000 of net taxable value. So there's an example right there. If your principal home is $200,000, your net taxable value after the homeowner's exemption is $100,000. So it shows what you'd be paying per month. We have a chart on at LPOSD.org that you can get in and you can look at what it would be for your particular property valuation. One thing to keep in mind, there's some misinformation out there that is suggesting that your property taxes will double if this passes, and that's not true. Your property taxes, the school district tax currently in Bonner County, it represents about 20% of the overall amount that you're taxed on. So it would be disingenuous to suggest that your property taxes will double, because there's a lot. I think the average is around $892 in Bonner County. That would suggest that it'll be $1,800. That's not true. The school tax portion would double, which means you have a 20% increase in your taxes. Our tax rate is doubling the school portion of the property taxes. So I want to be really clear on that. With the passage of this levy, our overall tax rate would just be slightly above the state average. So some people are thinking, oh my goodness, we are going to be so heavily taxed here in our community versus everyone else. Well, it's not true. It's slightly above the state average of this taxes.
Okay.
There's all kinds of reasons why this is important to our community, but I'll just go back instead of focusing on community, because there's all kinds of things related to economic vitality. But I'll just share a little bit about student learning. I mean, I hate to say this, but I will, because this is the truth, but we're hoping to get some improvements. The facilities are, condition of facilities have an impact on student learning, whether we'd like to believe that or not. A lot of people say, oh, you know, the school district is doing great. You know, they're consistently rated at or near the top in the state of Idaho. We don't need to invest this money into the facilities. Well, it's true that we have an unbelievable group of teaching staff, administrators, et cetera, that really push the envelope really hard when it comes to doing things differently to improve student learning. Unfortunately, the state of the facilities are outside of their control. High quality facilities make a difference. There's lots of research, if you would like to get any of it, I can share it with you, that decades of research that would support this. This one I like because, I mean, I don't like it, but it's a good reminder for me. The results of these studies show that it would be pretty counterproductive to continue to push so hard for increased student achievement without providing facilities that adequately support such achievement. Don't get me wrong, we'll continue to push and work with our staff and support them to have the best environment inside of whatever classroom they have. But they are being limited by facilities to an extent. I will go ahead and get into a little bit about carbon dioxide. We've had levels tested in all of our buildings, and there is an impact on air quality. It is not going to make children sick. And I told my wife this. I said, it will not make the kids sick. What will happen is it impacts levels of cognition, attention span, ability to think critically. And she challenged me on that. She said, that does not sound healthy. To me, that's not healthy. So quit telling people that doesn't impact their health. You know, if it's impacting their ability to think clearly and getting sleepy, it's a fact. The longer our students are in these classrooms without adequate ventilation, the higher the CO2 levels rise. And it's something that it's reality of the condition of our buildings.
So it's okay if I'm feeling sleepy right now?
It could be me. It could be me. Yeah, it's probably the speakers for people. So I'm going to speed up. But we've heard why not one school at a time. Our committee looked at it. We're looking at increased construction costs every year. A sound projection is 4.5% per year. On a $55 million project that's over $2 million, even if we put it off a year, it will cost that much. It's not something that all the people who work in the construction field are professional cost estimators say, yes, That's a fact. Our plan gets these schools rebuilt within 2.5 to 3 years. One school at a time, it would be 9, 10, 11 years before we get these things done. Without a doubt, if we were going to do them in such a way that we were going out for levies every 2-3 years, talking to pass them, and you have to deal with all other kinds of unknowns. People don't necessarily like to think about this way, but this reality of it is when people run bonds, you're borrowing money. When you're in this plant facility levy, you're borrowing money to do the work before the taxes come in. So that is the fact of the matter. If you're borrowing money, someone has said, "Oh my gosh, what if you default on the loan payments?" The truth of the matter is, yes, you lose your collateral, which is the school buildings. That, I've never heard of that happening anywhere in the U.S. when people run bonds or levies such as this one, because property taxes get paid. If you default on a loan, the bank pays your property taxes. Sometimes we get them later. It's a very safe proposition. It's about as risk averse as possible. This is a historically favorable time to finance projects like this, because bond rates are continuing to creep up and interest rates are going down. And we don't know what's going to happen a year from now. We have a pretty good idea what's going to happen in February. We can lock in for all these projects our interest rate at the end of December, and we'll go out for bid next February. We can lock in most of our construction costs outside of some of the projects, as many as we can. People worry about, did we budget the correct amount? We are very confident we did. We used a professional cost estimator, like I said, that works in North Idaho and northeastern Washington as well, with some comparable areas. And these are the numbers that we were given, and were cross-checked by architects that do work in this area as well. People worry about, well, what if you didn't? Do you have a contingency built in? We do, a 10% contingency built into the overall square footage cost. We also built in a 0.75% cushion on the interest rate, which equates to about $1 million. Those interest rates are looking really good right now. That our guess is pretty good, so that's great. And then we're actually required to set aside $1.25 million by the fiscal management company, so that at the end of these projects, if that we will have, once we get towards the end of this, $1.25 million. The Board of Trustees could decide to levy the full amount that we're asking for, or ask for less at that point. And that's to be seen. Okay, what kinds of questions might you all have? Or thoughts?
I just want to say that my husband was born and raised here, and his family really remembers the 80s and the difficulty when they went to double shifting and kids were at the middle school, high school, what was the high school then, from 6 to noon and then noon to 6 p.m. And facilities are a big factor, and it's unfortunate, but people who remember say, yeah, when we need new buildings, we need them. We can't put it off until we're double shifting again. So.
Well, and along that same line, I think as a citizen, I expect the hospital, that's a publicly funded facility, to have roofs and heating and electrical systems that are up to code. I assume that other public buildings do. Why are we putting children in buildings that aren't in that same situation? I just think that's very, very concerning.
Yeah, it is. I mean, we know that our buildings aren't ADA compliant, for instance.
Right.
We know that the roof snow ratings are not adequate. They do not build schools the same way. There's all kinds of things like that. So that I hear you. Yes?
Maybe we could ask Ken to come back up and explain. I think I heard you.
It's Kendon.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I apologize. But maybe we could ask you to come back up. And I heard you at another meeting, and I didn't catch everything that you had said about how you figured the money, how you came up with the $55 million and decided how to split it up.
Okay. So that, I mean, that process took into account